Welcome back, look at Cloud Consultant, and today it's the third and final episode of Identity Access and Security, episode 10 of our Azure AZ-900 Fundamentals Study Cram. Let's get into it. So, first things first, conditional access. So, it's an Entra ID tool. Basically, as we've talked about previously in multi-factor authentication, sometimes you can say, remember this device for 14 days. So it won't ask you for the second code. Sometimes not even for the password. And the way that it does this kind of thing is it gets signals, whether that's where you are, the way you've gotten to the website, or something. It then makes a decision based on this. So how risky is this? Is this likely? So if you're on a device and your device has in the same location, it's got the same IP address as the last time it was there, for example, and you're coming in the same way, i.e. through a browser, then probably you. But if it's the same device but it's a completely different IP and this time you're coming in via a different method, might not be you. And then it enforces it based on that. So it's useful for requiring MFA, requiring access services only through approved client apps, requiring users to access apps from managed devices only, so like only your laptop for work, not your phone, and then blocking access from untrusted sources. So if you know like specific IP address, probably going to be dodgy, you can use that in a signal, block it, don't let them in. Next up, RBAC, role-based access control. So this is essentially where you will be assigned a role, so it's role-based, and it's access control, so it's controlling your access to something. So this role-based access control is applied to a scope, which is a set of resources or a resource that the access is applied to. Here, for example, if you scroll in, you can see here's the standard roles in Azure, and here's your scopes. So you can see here for your role that really for a resource, it should only be to automate processes. You shouldn't be assigning people roles for singular resources. You don't really need to know this for AZ-900, but it's just good to know. Whereas for the other three, management group, subscription, and resource group, reader, observer, you're reading. Admin is the owner, they can do everything. And then all that in between is a variety of users who are managing the resources and using them. So, Azure RBAC, role-based access control, is enforced on any action that's initiated against an Azure resource that passes through Azure Resource Manager, which we'll get to in a way later episode, but Azure Resource Manager essentially manages resources. And whenever you interact with a resource, it's gone through Azure Resource Manager. Meaning every time you try to do anything to any resource, a role will be enforced, or a role RBAC will be enforced. So, next up, Zero Trust Model. Secure assets where they are with zero trust. So this is an approach to security where you may have heard before of grant the access of least privilege, something like that, which is essentially saying give people only what they need. So if we go back to like here, if you have someone who's an observer, don't go, well, in future they might need access, so we'll give them one of these. Or, they might, need to add a mate in a couple of months, so we'll make them admin. Absolutely not. Terrible way to do it. So, zero trust is actually a layer above or below. It's a layer more intense in which you're saying, let's just assume everything's going to go wrong and that there's always going to be a breach. So as you can see here, guiding principles, assume breach. And so you're going to minimize the blast radius, i.e. if you're doing RBAC and you have role-based access control, you make sure that the role the person has a tiny radius, meaning you want to be applying roles as low here as you can, so like at the resource group level. For instance, you don't want to be like, they'll probably need access to stuff, let's give them the whole subscription. Not a good way to do it, because if someone then gets access to it who shouldn't, they have more access than they should. And then use least privilege access principle, as we said, and verify explicitly, so always authenticate and authorize based on all available data points. Next up, we have defense in depth, which is an approach of securing every layer, every conceivable layer within Azure that you're leveraging. For example, physical security, that's just, securing your devices that you use to access Azure, for example. Identity and access, so that's you want to use single sign-on, MFA. The perimeter, so this is like your DDoS protection, which is distributed denial of service. It's a kind of attack where people would use bots to pretend there's loads of people, say, visiting your website, just so that the channel which lets users in to come see your website gets blocked because there's too many people, essentially. You can imagine it that way. Network, deny everything by default and have a secure connection between on-prem and Azure. Compute, secure access to your VMs, implement an endpoint protection, keep systems patched, meaning keep essentially your operating systems up to date, make sure that everything is secure as it can be. Application, store secrets securely, so using like Key Vault instead of having like your passwords in plain text, for example. And make security a design requirement, so when you're designing the app, make sure security is first and foremost. And finally, data. They're after databases, disks, and they're also after the things which are in SaaS products, which you might not even consider. For example, your Gmail is probably tied to your Google Drive, meaning if you have data in your Google Drive and someone accesses your email, not only do they have access to your emails, which then are probably linked to websites and where you have your bank cards leaked, you're going to get in trouble there. But you're also then going to have your Google Drive. So not to scare you, but this is why you need to be super secure. And then cloud storage with Google Drive. But SaaS was more pertaining to, say, PowerPoint or something, right? So as you can see here, when you have gone in at this zero trust idea, using roles for each layer here, like suddenly you have stacks, meaning if someone, say, breaks into physical security somehow to get your laptop, they still have to go through all of these to get the data, because the data is what they're after. Because think about it, even your bank card, the numbers of the data. So anyway, finally, we have Microsoft Defender for cloud. Protection everywhere. So this facilitates or gives protection for Azure native protections, PaaS, so it detects threats and anomalies on platforms, data services, it can classify SQL data, assess for vulnerabilities across SQL and storage accounts, and then networks, just-in-time VM access, and set access policies, including for a limited time. It can also protect hybrid resources, so that's some on-prem, some in Azure, as well as other clouds. The thing to note here is when it's leveraging other clouds, so say like AWS or GCP, let's just go with AWS, it leverages AWS's security guidance. And for that, you can see it via the CSPM, which is the Cloud Security Posture Management, and the Asset Inventory page. Now, it works on this idea of continuously assessing, securing, and defending. So, continual assessing is vulnerability assessments, essentially, and Defender for endpoints. So, it's just continually looking for it. It's then securing, which is hardening your resources and services with Azure Security Benchmark. We'll get into that in a second. And finally, defending, so detecting and resolving the threats. So advanced threat protection and security alerts, for example. So within Secure, we have this here, which would show you, if we zoom in, you can see it shows you like a score, it shows you different controls, remediations, so one which has been completed, 38 completed recommendations, and then a general resource health. So this is what you'd see if you were using the Defender for Cloud. And what this here actually means is, we'll move over, your secure score is a reflection, your secure score is a reflection of how well you're meeting the Azure Security Benchmark, which is implemented through security policies. And these policies lead to recommendations when resources don't meet the standards. So basically, you have a list of policies saying, I want to have this level of security, say, and then Defender for Cloud will check that against your resources and then give you a score based on that. So, I know that's a pretty heavy one because, cybersecurity and that, but that's us finished, identity, access and security. Come back next time where we will jump into the final module, management and governance. Hope you enjoyed. Take care, see you later.